more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And all of those joining us live from wherever you are joining us around the world. Good morning to you and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I am today's host, Dave Minuk. He's my main man, Ezra Ginsburg, and we've got, Ezzy's for some reason got no audio, but he's muted. But we've got 2 hours of Jets Moose talk coming your way. I don't know if Ezzy hit the mute button on his mic by accident.
I think we're good now.
Now he's good. Now the main man is ready to talk, and we'll have Kelly Moore up with us at 9:30 to give us some Jets insight, as he's been at training camp for the last 2 weeks of CJOB 680. And then, of course, the play-by-play voice of the Manitoba Moose, Daniel Fink, will join us to give us some insight on Moose training camp, which has now been underway for a few days. So let's kick things off. Ez, how you doing?
I'm good. We're getting closer, right? Like, it seems like it was just yesterday that we were talking about the start of training camp. And now we're less than a week from the first regular season game against the Flames, right? So, yeah, things are going well. Nice to be back to the two most handsome members of Illegal Curve. Drew's down in Hotlanta with the boys, so hopefully a few of them are tuning in down south. They're going to go check out a NFL game, a college football game, I think maybe a baseball game as well. I'm not sure who the Braves are playing, but we know that the Blue Jays are out, even though, you know, I'm still wearing the hat. I'm still a Jays fan. We won't get into that because that was just it was just depressing. If you're a Jays fan, it's just depressing at this point, right? Like they just year after year. I mean, the offense is, I know, a big problem. You know me, Dave. I'm a fair weather Blue Jays fan. I'm not as hardcore as you and Drew are, but I know, you know, the Jays situation well enough to know that both the coach and the GM, you know, their jobs might be in jeopardy. But we're here to talk about hockey. Thankfully, here to talk about the Jets and the Moose. And yeah, let's get going, because I don't even know if we have enough time to cover everything, because there's a lot of moving parts, as you know, right now with this Jets team and some of these injured bodies.
Well, it's interesting because I was going back and looking, preparing for this show today and thinking about all the things that have transpired since our last show. And it's amazing what happens when, you know, the beauty of those post-game shows is that sometimes we don't necessarily just talk about the Jets games themselves, but we get a chance to talk about some of the things that are going on in Jets land. So we have, you know, pretty much every second day we're in conversation about the Jets here on our Illegal Curve YouTube channel. Be sure, by the way, that you've hit that subscribe button, of course. But the interesting thing to me is when it's been a week is a lot. It's like a lifetime, especially during training camp when so much is going on. And of course, let's start with the biggest news of the week. And that was, you know, flashing back to that Thursday night Jets game, the final preseason exhibition game of the preseason with the Ottawa Senators in town. I don't know what Ottawa has about injuring Jets defensemen, but they did it on the Friday before in Ottawa with Elias Salamonson, and now they, of course, do it with Ville Heinola. No intent to injure in this one. It's just an unfortunate incident along the boards, but of course, as soon as you saw it, you knew it wasn't good. Heinola's reaction was pretty brutal. And you could see he couldn't even get off the ice. And then when they showed him walking to the tunnel or hobbling to the tunnel, you knew it wasn't good. And then we realized the severity of it, Ezzy, because Rick Bowness came out and said, it's not good. It's not going to be short term. So we knew right then and there. And it's amazing.
Never a good sign, right? Like,
no.
A lot of the time, you know, we've been covering this team for all 13 years. And a lot of the time, you know, whether it was Paul Maurice or Claude Noel, usually they're just going to say, you know, we'll have to wait until tomorrow to find out more, right? So whenever, and anybody who, like you said, Dave, anybody who was watching, you know, the Jets Sens game or who watched the replay could tell that, you know, this was going to be serious. But when Rick Bowness comes out and says, you know, this isn't going to be short term, it's going to be long term. And then we found out yesterday, obviously, that it was going to be, you know, 8 to 12 weeks. So, yeah, I think it was pretty obvious to most people that, you know, that was going to be a serious injury for Heinola, which is really unfortunate because it looked like he was going to make the team.
Well, and that to me is the interesting comments and what a difference 12 hours can make. You know, just before 11 a.m. on Thursday, Rick Bowness was asked by Scott Billick as to whether Heinola has essentially secured his spot. And Bowness's response, in part, said he's done everything he can to make this hockey club. Okay. And obviously we know about his waiver exempt status, and the Jets may have had to have made a decision with respect to Declan Chisholm or Logan Stanley as to which of the two they were potentially going to send down and possibly lose on waivers, because neither of them are waiver exempt like Heinola. But it seemed like everything we've seen from this camp, whether it's in practice at Hockey for All Center or in games, is that Ville Heinola has done more than enough to make this hockey club. So that was at 11 o'clock in the morning. And then, as I just said, Ezzy, a few minutes ago, it's not good. It's not going to be a short-term injury from the head coach. And of course, yesterday afternoon, after this Jets skated at 12:30, we had a chance to talk to Rick Bowness again. And his comment was that Ville Heinola had fractured his ankle and that they didn't have a timeline. He said surgery was a possibility, but the player hadn't determined, I guess, what route he wanted to take. And as a result, Rick Bowness didn't have a definitive answer as when it came to how long he was going to be out. But what he did say was that it's 8, 10, or 12 weeks, and that they're sending Heinola back to Finland in order to be with his family and his friends to heal up, kind of, try and recover from the mental.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, he's got to have
what
the
is
mental.
What is he going to do in Winnipeg, especially when the team goes on a little bit of a long road trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just super unfortunate, right? Like, look, there are a lot of defensemen in the Jets picture right now, right? Like, we've talked about Logan Stanley. We've talked about Kyle Capobianco, who is injured. We'll get to that in a second, because IR is always a possibility for him and Nick Ehlers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anybody who's been following training camp, and, I got to give you a ton of credit, Dave M., because you've been there, if not every day, you've been there almost every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been watching Heinola and especially watching him in the preseason. I mean, he's done everything that has been required of him. He looks stronger, he's skating better, he looks more confident. That's the thing that stood out for me, Dave, in training camp and preseason. He's a more confident defenseman, right? Like, we've known the skill set is there since he was drafted back in 2019, right? And he spent parts of 3 seasons with the Moose. And we talked about this back in early summer. Like, training camp was going to be probably bigger for Heinola than other players, because he's trying to crack into that top 6 with Dylan Samberg establishing himself on that left side. So it looked like, Heinola was going to be one of the 8 defensemen, because for those who don't know, the Jets roster has to be down to 23 before Monday, and we expect there to be 2 defensemen and 1 forward.
As the
so it looks like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, for now, unless Ehlers plays, will be part of those 13, and then David Gustafsson, quote unquote, got the 13th forward spot, right?
Yeah.
So it's just really unfortunate for a young defenseman who looked so good. And even though Bowness wouldn't confirm that Heinola had made the team a couple days ago, I think it's pretty safe to say, Dave, that Heinola was sticking up with the Jets, at least to start the season.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question about it. I think that, for folks who are saying that Heinola is too small, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I watched the kid play. Look, this wasn't an injury because he was too small. This could have happened to Brendan Dillon. It could have happened to anybody. Look, is Dylan Samberg too small? I mean, if folks really want to, well, he's not, right? Dylan Samberg, big boy.
Well, he's 6'2" or 6'3",
right?
So,
but he's a solid
that's
kid,
not small,
and he's solid, right? And the point I'm making is that Dylan Samberg, in day 1 of training camp in 2021, 2022, going up in a play against Johnny Kovacevic, got sustained a high ankle sprain. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is that big guys, little guys, and all size guys, including Ezzy and I, could sustain an injury in any way, in any capacity. So, and the fact that Ville Heinola is a smaller guy, I know, I'm just saying, like, that doesn't impact his ability to
Brandstrom. And Eric Brandstrom's not 6'7" either, right? Like, Eric Brandstrom is what you would kind of call not undersized. No, he's, what is he, 6 feet, 6'1"? I mean, that's kind of the same. He's not that much taller than Heinola, if anything, right? So, look, Heinola, it was an aggressive play in the last game of preseason, and than it was for Brendan Dillon or, Neil Pionk, who's already made the team, right? So this whole conversation of undersized, to me, is a little bit overrated. Like, do you need big defensemen in the playoffs? Yes. If you look at the teams that have been successful, Vegas, St. Louis, Colorado, they've got, defensemen that are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". And the Jets do have a couple of those big guys. We talked about Dillon, and obviously Logan Stanley, who looks like he's the 8th defenseman right now, or at the very least, he hasn't cracked the top 6. But look, Heinola, it's up. Like, I always look at defensemen like like, I'll go back to a former Devil, Brian Rafalski, or you look at a guy like Torrey Krug on the St. Louis Blues, before that, obviously on the Bruins, right, Dave? Like, you have to learn how to use your size effectively.
Yeah.
You can be a productive defenseman in the NHL and be 5'11" or 6 feet. Look at a guy like Neil Pionk. Neil Pionk's not 6'7". He's only 5'11", 6 feet, and he handles himself. Or Josh Morrissey is another guy. He's only 6 feet, right?
Heinola and Morrissey are the same size.
Right.
The only difference is that Morrissey's a more substantial player, like in terms of he's filled out more than Heinola has. And Heinola's definitely bulked up this summer, but he is what he is. And look, you can say whatever you want, but the fact of the matter is that the Jets need someone. Remember, I don't disagree with the logic that you need big defensemen, but the Jets don't have those big defensemen right now. They have, guys like Morrissey and DeMello, and so you can suggest that Heinola's an effective player. That's the key. So again, like I said, I'm not anointing, Ville Heinola as Bobby Orr. I'm not doing that by any stretch of the imagination. I'm saying that having watched this kid play in the AHL every game, and having watched this kid play throughout the course of this training camp, practice and play, I could say that confidently that he's effectively an NHLer. He really is. I mean, again, is he a top pairing NHLer? No, I'm not saying that. But could I see him effectively playing? And look, he's transitioned over to the right side. He's done it pretty well. And it's one thing we talked about with Nate Schmidt. Nate Schmidt, when he went to Washington, the left side, he's a left shot guy, but the whole left side was locked in Washington. Coach asked him if he can play the right side. He said, I sure can. Because he knew he had to adapt. And so Heinola's doing the same. And you don't have to take my word for it. Again, like I've talked to people who are in hockey who all agree that Heinola's had an exceptional camp. So it's not just two guys who are, whatever you want to say, waving Heinola pom-poms. I'm talking to guys who, are in the organization, who have seen what this kid has done and feel that he deserved a chance at the NHL level. So to me, again, sorry, as I just finish up, I just think that it's an unfortunate situation, and it's worth mentioning because of the fact that Heinola has done it. The whole point of this training camp was to see what Heinola was able to do and whether he'd be able to crack the Jets lineup. And I'm just simply saying he did crack the lineup. Unfortunately for him, it's going to be till probably 2024 before we see him again.
Well, and before this injury happened, as you know, Dave, we would have been talking about, has Heinola done enough to push himself into the top six, not just cracking the opening night 23-man roster, but like you said, because of his ability to play on the right side, like, could Nate Schmidt have been the odd man out, right? Like, he was dealing with that injury. Yeah. Now he's better, right? So that's the conversation we would have been having, right? Like, is Ville Heinola, possibly on the left side in the top six? Most likely not, right? Because we know that Dylan Sandberg has established himself on that third pair. And then you've got obviously Morrissey and Dylan in front of him. So I don't know if he necessarily would have played in the first game against the Calgary Flames, but I think at the very least, he would have been on that 23-man roster to start the season. And probably Logan Stanley would be the other one. I mean, I don't know, Dave, that's where it would have, it's not a blessing in disguise. I definitely wouldn't say that, because I still think you have to figure out this logjam, right? Is Declan Chisholm, is he on the 23-man opening night roster? And I think you want to get into that as well, because you definitely don't want to lose him on waivers. But then, what's the situation with Logan Stanley, right? Is Logan Stanley going to play, is he going to basically be in the press box the whole year? Are they going to waive him? Are they going to look to move him? Even with Heinola's injury, Dave, what I'm saying is there still is a logjam on the back end.
No, you're absolutely right. And let's move on from the injury to Ville Heinola and move on to what you've just touched on a couple times, Ezzy, that idea of a 23-man roster. Because the Jets had 28 yesterday morning. They moved to 27 because they put Parker Ford. We should probably talk about Parker Ford a little bit, who's as Rick Bowness said, I didn't even know who this guy was before training camp started, and now suddenly he's on the map. And that goes to show you again what the importance of training camp is. I know we sometimes malign it and talk negatively. Oh, training camp and these exhibition games, it's too long. But it does something like this, which allows a player who was completely off the map.
Hold on, keep your thought, Dave. Yeah. It is too long. Did you not see Sidney Crosby fighting yesterday?
Peyton Krebs, by the way.
What? Yeah, exactly. The former Winnipeg Ice forward. Yeah, it is too long, Dave. But that's not changing. But as far as I'm concerned, each team should play 2 or 3 preseason games. That's it. 2 or 3. I don't need to see 6 or 8 preseason games. So training camp is too long. I mean, you had Pierre LeBrun talking about a September 20th start, so the Stanley Cup could be awarded by the end of May. Yeah, sign me up for that. Let's go.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think that the season drags way too long. There's no question about it. I've changed my opinion though, in that I talked to Daniel Torgerson in the summer when we did that one-on-one, the Jets 2020 second rounder. And, I listened to what he had to say about the value of playing in a preseason game. And again, if the Jets are only playing 2 or 3, none of these rookies are playing because it's going to be used for veterans to kind of get ready to ramp up for the season. So I'm with you. I don't think there need to be 8, but I think 5 or 6 are fine. And like I said, well, anyways, like I said, but
that's 2 or 3 too many, Dave. No, it's funny because we do this, we do this every single year, right? We talk about there's too many preseason games, and then it's like, who's listening? Nobody's listening. Most hockey fans agree that 6 preseason games or 7 preseason games, whatever it is, that's too much. But nothing's going to be nothing will change in the near future.
Yeah,
that is a Ginsburg guarantee right there. The NHL is not reducing the amount of preseason games. I just think it's ridiculous, right? Because you could make the argument, it's kind of a silly argument, but you could make the argument, like Ville Heinola would have made the Jets opening night roster and been healthy if there wasn't that extra preseason game, which to me is a ludicrous argument. So I'm not really sure why I brought it up.
Yeah, I'm like, did you just bring something up and then call it ludicrous?
It's too long. I mean, thankfully, training camp is almost over and the season's about to begin. And the Jets, I think they have both of these days off, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
right?
Saturdays
and they deserve it, right? They've been on the ice for 16 days now. It's
17.
Yeah, it's a long preseason. But you're right, Dave. For players like Parker Ford, and might as well talk about him now. I mean, you broke the news that the Moose were signing Parker Ford out of Providence College. And I think he has looked impressive in training camp. And we talked about it a little bit last week, and Drew mentioned, could Ford, crack the top 13? I just didn't think it was unrealistic because you have a guy like David Gustafsson, for me, who that was his job to lose, right, Dave?
Right.
I mean, Parker Ford, I think, would be really well served to have a full year in the American Hockey League. He's only 23 years old. Maybe if there's some injuries in the Jets forward group, maybe he gets in there. And even Rick Bowness mentioned that. He basically said, not verbatim, but he said, we're going to see this guy up with the Jets this year, which I think is very promising. He is a Brandon Tanev type of player. And so I think he could be effective in a 4th line role for the Jets.
There's no question about it. And all I'm saying is that it's put him on the map when he wasn't on the map before. So that has been the value of training camp for someone like Parker Ford. But the reality also is he'll go down to the Moose. He'll play big minutes as opposed to being a 13th forward. And you're right. He was never going to be the 13th forward because essentially, although David Gustafsson looks like he could effectively be in that top 12, but right now, David Gustafsson, especially with his defensive play, we saw it in Calgary on the, when the Jets took 2 early penalties, David Gustafsson right in there on the PK, and he
chipped in some offense. Exactly. Right. And that was the knock on him. And I think what kept him out of the lineup, it was essentially, Dave, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby and Saku Manalainen, who were keeping Gustafsson out of the lineup, if you think about that, right?
Yeah.
And, so he was scoring, and he's had a good camp, good preseason. And obviously, I don't know how much time you want to spend on Jansen Harkins. I mean, it's nice that Harkins gets that chance with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But, there was always the chance we focused on the defense, but there was always a chance the Jets were going to lose a forward. Look, a guy like Dominic Toninato was also on waivers. Thankfully for the Moose, he cleared, right? Because he's going to play a big role with the Moose. But that's just the reality. You lose players on waivers. The Senators, they put Jacob Bernard-Docker, former UND defenseman. I thought somebody would claim him for sure. Have you looked at the Chicago Blackhawks defense lately? I thought on the right side, Jacob Bernard-Docker would look great on the Blackhawks, or another team, that doesn't really have a lot of D depth. So, I mean, teams lose players all the time. But for Harkins, it's a better opportunity for him.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And it looks like he's, they're enjoying him in Pittsburgh, and the coaching staff has said very complimentary things. And, there's no surprise your GM went out and got a player. So you gotta pump him up a little bit, but good for Jansen Harkins, one of the hardest working guys we've seen for the Jets organization. 2015 second rounder that vaunted as the 2015 draft class. We were there in, what was that Del Boca Vista?
It was Sunrise, baby.
Yeah. So that was
went to a Marlins game with Weber. I don't remember who the Marlins were playing, but I do remember it was Japanese Heritage Night.
Yep.
Or something like that. So we got some Ichiro Suzuki swag.
Yes.
But yeah, that was a very fun draft. And yeah, that 2015 draft for the Jets was starting with Kyle Connor, and it's like it just kept getting better and better.
Yeah, no, they've done exceptionally well in that. They did exceptionally well in that draft. So many of those guys went on to play in the NHL, even if they wasn't necessarily right now, currently for the Winnipeg Jets. But so you've got Parker Ford made an impression. The Jets, of course, lost Jansen Harkins to the Pittsburgh Penguins on waivers. I think that was on Tuesday. Lots has been happening, and now as we're getting down to the nitty gritty, what is the Jets' 23-man roster going to look like? So as I was starting to say, you had 28. And then they put Jeffrey Viel on waivers, and he went cleared and went to the Moose. Then they put Parker Ford, so that's 27. Now the injury to Ville Heinola, we know he's down, so for at least 2 to 3 months. So that takes him to 26. And then the question is Nikolai Ehlers and Kyle Capobianco. Now yesterday at skate, Kyle Capobianco was in a yellow non-contact jersey, so he most likely would start on IR, so he won't count, but you can take him off the roster. So that allows you to kind of make that decision a little bit later as to what you're going to do. I still expect the Jets at this point to waive Capobianco. So that takes you to 25. And then if Ehlers is on IR, then that takes you to 24. And then, of course, the Jets have a third goaltender in Colin Delia, who I suspect they'll put on waivers as opposed to Laurent Brossoit. So they'll put Colin Delia on waivers, and that would get you to 23. Now, the question, of course, becomes, and we're going to have to wait till Monday to find out, because as you touched on, as the Jets are off today and tomorrow doing some team building and bonding and Thanksgiving stuff this weekend. So the question becomes, if Ehlers is skating and looks good and he's with Perfetti and Niederreiter on that second line on Monday, well, the Jets are going to have to submit their roster. We'll see what they do in that regard. But if they do, then they have a decision. To me, the decision is probably Axel Jonsson-Fjällby would go on waivers, and then you're roster compliant, provided all those other moves I just illustrated take place.
And hopefully he clears, right? Like, sorry, I'm going to remind everybody of my membership in the Axel Jonsson-Fjällby fan club. I think I might be the president, actually.
Okay.
Not only does he have beautiful hair and a beautiful Swedish name, I just think he's very valuable for this team, right? Like, I'm not saying that Axel, like, with Alex Iafallo and Rasmus Kupari now in the Jets bottom six, Dave, I think, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby has been pushed out, meaning that if, Ehlers is healthy, he would have been, let's say, the 14th forward. So if the Jets decided to keep 14 forwards, he would be up with the Jets. But I hope he doesn't get claimed for the Moose's sake and the Jets' sake, right? Because he can be a productive player for the Moose. But if there are injuries, and just to remind everybody, there always are injuries over the course of an NHL season. A guy like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, for me, is exactly the type of player you want to call up and plug into the fourth line, right? Gives you some energy, provides a little bit of offense. He's not, Alex Ovechkin, but, what did he have? 5 or 6 goals last year. I just like the type of player he is, that energetic, he can throw his body around a little bit, can kill penalties. But I think it's 50-50 if he's claimed, Dave. I don't know what you think, but I could see a team claiming him, but I definitely hope for the sake of the Jets and the Moose, he isn't claimed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the organization signed him with the intention of wanting to keep him within the framework of the Jets/Moose. And I think they're probably happy with, maybe there were some question marks about David Gustafsson, right? As to whether he would be that 13th man or higher. And again, I think it's funny. I'm pretty sure there was a Ginsburg guarantee during the preseason that David Gustafsson would score a goal. I don't know if you want to waste it.
Oh, he's absolutely going to score a goal this year.
But I
see him in preseason. He's going to score. There's no
the leading scorer.
Way. I mean, there's no possible way that he goes another season, right? Like, even if David Gustafsson only plays half of a year, he's going to score some. I predict he scores 5 goals this year. That's my prediction.
I think it's reasonable. I actually think that, he was a little snake bit last year. He had some chances, but I think that there's definitely a shot that we've seen a guy who is confident and is ready to, play. Of course, he'd like to play all the games. And as you said, there's always going to be injuries. So to me, the likelihood is you're going to see that move where you'll see Axel Jonsson-Fjällby put on waivers. And look, at the end of the training camp, that's really where, the teams all dump their guys down to the minors. So most likely what we're going to see is you're going to see, a bunch of teams make moves. And if you don't have the space, even if you think a guy is good and valuable, you remember, you have to keep him on your roster, right? So when teams are clearing, trying to get down to the 23, it's hard for them to add unless they suffer some sort of injury. So to me, my expectation is the Jets will make the move, put Janssen Vielby and Delia on waivers, have IR for Capobianco for sure. And again, Ehlers is the question mark, and then we'll see what else transpires. But it is not surprising, I don't think, the 23, other than the expectation that the Jets get to punt down the road. The big question we were going to have, which was, what were they going to do with the defense? Would they send Heinola down because he's waiver exempt and keep Stanley and Chisholm up? Or would they prepare to lose potentially one of those guys by sending them on waivers?
Well, and that's the thing. It goes back to the conversation we had earlier. If Heinola was healthy, then most likely you do have to waive a defenseman. And I agree with you. Capobianco makes the most sense. It would have been Capobianco or Stanley. I think we agree on that. I just don't see why you would waive Declan Chisholm. To me, that's the last guy that you want to put on waivers. But now that Heinola is injured, you don't have to waive. So that to me is probably the biggest surprise, the biggest development over the last week. It's that you'll probably have to waive a guy like Axel Janssen Vielby, but you don't have to waive a defenseman because of Capobianco's injury and Heinola's injury. So in that sense, it's good for the Jets. They're not going to lose a defenseman. But again, it's not ideal that you lose Jansen Harkins, a former second-round pick, and Axel Janssen Vielby. Obviously, Harkins, you probably care about more because you drafted and developed him, right? But like I said, hopefully a guy like AJF doesn't get claimed, because I do think he could really help the Moose.
Okay, well, we're going to head to break. Before we do, we're going to give a shout out to our boy Kenny's Water Bottle. We're not going to do any political opinions here, but we're going to give a shout out to you for your number 2 thing, which is you and your colleagues at work donating 50 turkeys to the Main Street Project. That's really great, Kenny. So thank you.
Way to go, Kenny's Water Bottle. That's awesome to see.
No, it's really nice that you did that. And of course, happy Thanksgiving to everyone who's celebrating this weekend and thinking of others who are less fortunate. That's always a nice way to reflect on our community. So thank you, KWB, for that great donation to a really worthwhile cause that can always use more. So if you
Dave, do you think that Drew's going to have a turducken down in Atlanta?
Oh, I would imagine that Drew's going to be eating all sorts of foods in hot Atlanta this weekend. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll get, Drew's a foodie, if you will. So I'm sure there'll be some nauseating pictures of food.
Well, I'm happy for Drew that he gets to gallivant around Atlanta and, go to restaurants and go to bars and go to all these sporting events, while me and you roll up our sleeves and do all the hard work, holding down the illegal curve fort. Must be nice for Drew to have that in his contract.
I agree with you. So first, let's head to break. You are listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Smash that like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be back. And when we come back, Kelly Moore of 680 CJOB will join us.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See LindenMarketDental.com.
Boston Pizza lives for the big moments. Whether the season is just starting or coming to an epic end. From nerve-wracking ninth innings to OT winners, playoff buzzer beaters to Hail Mary miracles. BP is the best place to watch the game if you can't be at the game. Great food, ice-cold Sub-Zero Coors Light, and friends. And the best part? Season seats are free. Grab your crew and cheer on the good guys at Canada's favorite sports bar, Boston Pizza. Gather round. Must be legal drinking age. Please drink responsibly.
We did it! Again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake. After a great game or great deal, it shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I am Dave Minuk. He is Ezra Ginsburg. And we are happy to welcome Kelly Moore, Jets game host, 680 CJOB.
Indoors, Kelly Moore. No outdoor patio this time.
That's true. No outdoor.
In the home studio today, guys.
Well, that's true. Kelly, how are you?
I am well. I don't know about you guys, but I did stay up way past my bedtime, my normal bedtime last night to watch that thriller that was anything but vanilla and not in vanilla. But what a football game. What a way to start the Thanksgiving weekend. Yeah.
Huge Bombers win.
And Kelly, we've got to give a shout out because I saw on your Twitter your grandson
was
featured up on the Jumbotron. So maybe let everybody know what was going on there in BC.
Yeah, that's my youngest grandson, Lewin, who was at the hockey game with his dad and his older brother Wellesley, and it was in my old office, so to speak. I don't even know what the title name of it is. Back in the day, it was Riverside Coliseum. And I know it was Sandman Place at one point. I think it might be South Central Interior Credit Union Place now. But at any rate, the Blazers were playing host to the Victoria Royals. And you know how they always do the cam shot of the smile and that sort of thing. So there's my little Lou. He's about 9.5 months old. He's got the nice blue headset on. Nice. Yeah, and I'm sure the Blazers would not have made the connection there, but it was a proud grandpa moment for sure.
They're getting him started early in hockey, and that's probably in his grandfather's old stomping ground. So that's a nice way to
Kelly, how are you a grandfather? You're too young to be a grandfather. What's going on here?
Well, maybe I just hide it well, but no, I'm a proud grandfather of 4. Our 2 granddaughters live here in Winnipeg, and then our 2 grandsons are in Kamloops. So yeah, they are the lights of my life. I'll tell you, there's nothing like being a mom or a dad, but being a grandparent's even more special.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you got to have that moment yesterday, Kelly.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was absolutely awesome. I can't tell you how great that felt.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, let's talk about some other things that you've been observing.
Yeah.
At Jets training camp the last 17 days that we've been at the Hockey for All Center for the most part. Maybe what are some of your just initial takeaways from the couple of weeks that we've been watching the Jets play and practice?
You know, 2 of the better stories, in my opinion, would be Parker Ford and David Gustafson. I love the way, and you were in the scrum yesterday, Dave, so when Rick Bowness said that, Parker Ford wasn't even supposed to play 1 preseason game, let alone 4. But I love it. I love it when these young guys come in against all odds, put their nose to the grindstone, and just do whatever they can to get on the coach's radar. And that's certainly what Parker Ford did. He made some great plays in the first preseason game that he played in at Canada Life Center when the Jets beat the Edmonton Oilers 5-0. And then, circumstances kind of dictated whether it was injuries like the one to Nikolai Ehlers or illness that started to affect the club's numbers. But it was his performance that allowed him to keep on being added to the game sheet. I thought, quite frankly, his best game was the last one that he played in Calgary, when he was front and center on both of those plays on the David Gustafson goals, which, there's my neat segue into number 19. But the Gus bus has been rolling in training camp and preseason. And, Dave, you saw the line arrangements going into the start of training camp, and he was kind of on that so-called fifth line. And, he told us all that his goal in this camp was to establish himself in that group of forwards that are going to start the NHL season. And then he wanted to cement his position. And I think he has. He's done all the things that you would expect him to do in terms of playing solid defense, winning some faceoffs, and being part of the penalty killing unit, which was very good for the Jets in the preseason, keeping in mind that you've got rotating lineups all the way through that. But, of course, the other bonus is he scored 3 goals. He had that deflection in the win over Edmonton, and then he scored a couple of beauty goals, pure goals, in that loss against Calgary. So, for my mind, aside from all of the challenges that have prevented the Jets from doing what they wanted to do at the outset, and that is, get their NHL lineup ready. And as Rick Bowness pointed out, to make sure that the 3 ex-Los Angeles Kings, Gabriel Velarde, Alex Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari, were all given the chance to feel comfortable with their lines. Well, none of that was able to happen due to a different set of circumstances. So a long-winded overview of the 2.5 weeks of training camp.
No, but there's lots of moving parts here. And I have to ask you about Nikolai Ehlers, Kelly, because you mentioned him earlier. And I mean, everyone agrees that it's unfortunate that Ehlers didn't get to play any preseason games. But how surprised are you with how this injury has seemed to linger, right? And obviously Rick Bowness said that there's a chance that Ehlers is going to play. But I mean, what do you think the possibilities are that, he's placed on IR before Wednesday? And we're not going to know that answer until Monday at the earliest, right? With the Jets off. But I mean, it just seems like this injury just continues to be a lingering problem. And it doesn't, I told Dave right before we started the show today, it's kind of like 50-50 whether Ehlers is going to be in the opening night lineup.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Ezzy, 100%. And it's funny, we kind of went through this last year with the sports hernia because, there was the decision as to whether he was going to have the operation or whether rehab and maybe a little bit of rest would help him make his way through that. And then all of a sudden, holy crows, he's missed 36 games after playing in only 2. But I think that, and here's the rub. Like Rick Bowness said yesterday, that they're going to sit down as an organization and talk about these roster decisions tomorrow on Sunday. But they're not scheduled to have their next practice until Monday. So now maybe they're given some clarity from Nikolai that, I still don't know if I'm going to be able to practice or I'll be at practice, before making their decision on what they're going to do with the roster. But Dave and I were actually talking about this in the stands at Hockey for All Center yesterday, in terms of how the Jets could maybe get down to their 23 without having to risk putting anybody on waivers. And Nikolai Ehlers is part of that equation. I mean, we know Ville Heinola is not going to be able to start the year. We're pretty sure Colin Delia is going to be sent to the Manitoba Moose. And so then if you were to put, and Kyle Capobianco was still skating in a gold jersey yesterday, so as Nick or as Nate Schmidt likes to call it, the yellow banana, or big banana, or whatever it was he referred to. So, there's all likelihood that you could put Kyle Capobianco on IR. If you do that with Nikolai Ehlers, you're down to your 23 and not having to risk exposing anybody on waivers. So he hasn't been in the main practices for the last couple of days. He did skate with the extra group on the game day before the Ottawa game, but he wasn't out there with them yesterday. Maybe that was scheduled, maybe it wasn't. They're taking today and tomorrow off, and then maybe 2 practices would be enough. But Ezzy, if you had to bet money, I think you'd have to say that it's more likely Nick would start the year on IR than he would with his name on the 20 for October 11th in Calgary.
We're joined by Kelly Moore of 680 CJOB discussing all things Jets training camp here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Kelly, 11 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, we hear he's done everything he can to make this hockey club. 12 hours, less than 12 hours later, it's not good. It's not going to be a short-term injury. And of course, the next day, Rick Bowness delivers the news that Ville Heinola is done anywhere with a fractured ankle, anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, we don't need to discuss the injury so much, but just what did you see from Ville Heinola's camp overall that left you feeling good about the 2019 first rounder?
Confidence, poise, being able to play with pace, not getting caught up in traffic, being decisive, with moving the puck, when to move the puck, carrying the puck when he was supposed to. It just seemed like all of the concerns that had been felt and discussed over the previous couple of years. Ville would always get off to great starts in training camp and the preseason, but then it would be those last, one or two games of the preseason where the lineups looked a lot more like NHL caliber lineups, and then you started to see those little flaws in his game. And because he was waiver exempt, and because there were some question marks, and there were proven commodities ahead of him, the decision was, as Rick Bowness has said, the players will ultimately perform and make the decisions for themselves. And in those previous preseasons, I thought Ville did that. But I thought this year he completely put all those to rest. I would have been shocked if he had not been in the opening night lineup ahead of Nate Schmidt. And just to see how he would do, keeping in mind that's another level that he was going to have to prove himself at. But there was very little to not like about Ville Heinola's game in this preseason and training camp. And to see how that played out, 13 and a half minutes into the game against Ottawa on Thursday night, a harmless looking play. I wasn't sure whether it was the knee or the ankle. Dave, you and I were yakking about that yesterday as well. But it was either or. I was more convinced it was the knee, but it turned out to be the fractured ankle. And I guess, Rick Bowness, I listened back to the tape, Dave, and 8 to 12 weeks was kind of like throwing out numbers. He wasn't really sure. And I wonder how much, we were told also that the decision would be made either yesterday afternoon or maybe today as to whether Ville would require surgery. And I'm not sure how that affects the timeline for when he returns as well.
Kelly, I wanted to ask you just about, I know it's still really early and we still haven't even played a regular season game here, even though it's coming up very quickly, but you've covered this team for a long time. And I just wanted to ask you what you've seen. I don't know if you want to call it the vibes, the culture, just the overall kind of your overall impressions of camp with a new captain in Adam Lowry. And then obviously the LA Kings that you talked about, Alex Iafallo, Gabe Vilardi, and Rasmus Kupari. What have you seen tangibly different about this team? Because obviously at this time of year, we're all wearing rose-colored glasses and everybody has the highest expectations, but it certainly seems like there's less baggage with this team. I realize that Scheifele and Hellebuck, the contract status is still there, but it definitely seems like a much more positive training camp and preseason. It just seems maybe, I don't know, with lack of a better term, a little fresher than in previous years.
Well, I might need to get a little bit of the spray here to clear my glasses off, because when I think about the Winnipeg Jets this year, from everything I've seen, and as the preseason has progressed, I'm taking a more muted outlook on what I think should be expected of this hockey club. Unlike a year ago, I think it might be a case of where they have their greatest challenges at the start of the year, and then if they can remain healthy, will be a better club in the second half with the way that they're presently constructed. The biggest difference right off the get-go was when the Jets announced their training camp groups, and they were separate groups. There was half the NHL or the perceived NHL lineup in one group and the other half in the other. Whereas the year before, there was the NHL team skated amongst themselves, and then it was up to the outsiders to wedge their way into that group. So it was totally different from that aspect this time around. Clearly, it's a different vibe with Blake Wheeler not here. Other than Mark Scheifele, I can't think of anybody else who was in the Jets lineup on opening night against Montreal back on October 9th of 2011. So that is different in itself. As for the vibe, I think it's, last year when I'll never forget, Mark Scheifele said excited about 12 times during his opening media availability. It's, there's not quite the same vibe with the new coaching staff and that type of thing. But with the new people in the room, I think there's an expectation that this team has started to transition from this highly skilled, light up the scoreboard type of unit to one that's going to have to rely a little bit more on a blue collar style of hockey. And that's one of the many reasons that makes Adam Lowry the perfect choice as team captain. I think your captain should be the beacon for how you want to play. And we all know how Adam Lowry goes about his business. So I think the message is there, how I think this team is going to be different now, because they have so many different moving parts, and when we talk about the 3 LA Kings, but let's also, look at Vlad Namestnikov and Nino Niederreiter, who came in for about the final 20 or 24 games or whatever it was after the deadline. They're getting a chance to start afresh with this hockey club. And you also have Cole Perfetti, who's moved from the wall to center ice and is learning that position on the fly in the National Hockey League. There's a third of your lineup. And Laurent Brossoit would even tip the scales even further as the backup, although I don't, that's kind of seamless. I think that'll go really, really smooth. But I just see where this hockey club, I think, is going to have to ground and pound for everything they can achieve for about the first 6 to 8 weeks. And that's even more ramped up with how things have been delayed through this training camp. And Rick Bowness has said, I'm a guy who doesn't look at excuses or solutions, but it's real. They have not been able to have the continuity for these 2.5 weeks that they were envisioning. So I think that makes, trying to get things going in the right direction once the NHL season starts on Wednesday night, even more of a process.
Kelly, one of the things that we heard about, Paul Friesen of the Sun asked, I think, Josh Morrissey about the pillars of this team and what the pillars are going to be. And he talked about everybody looking the same, everybody playing the same. And I thought, and Kyle Connor also kind of reiterated that point when we spoke with him earlier this week. And I thought, if you can get the guys like Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele to buy into that idea of defensive-minded hockey a little bit more, because this team is not going to score, this is not going to be I don't think one of the top 5 scoring teams in the NHL, but defensively, if this team can, as a whole, play together and play similar. And you talked about it with Rick Bowness when you talked about seeing them being more aggressive, all going into the zone together in terms of their structure. So to me, I think that's one of the things that is going to be very interesting. And you just touched on a little bit in your answer to Ezzy, was that idea that this team collectively now will have that under their belt and have a second year with Rick Bowness and what he wants. And even Kyle Connor, even though it was funny because he talked about Rick Bowness being more relaxed, and then the next day Rick Bowness was barking a lot. And so I just thought, well, you tempted fate there, Kyle. But it's that idea, I think, that this team is going to look the same. And that, to me, if you can do that, if you can truly play that team game and remove the individual element, that will serve the Jets very well, especially with, like you just talked about, that goalie tandem of Connor Hellebuck and Laurent Brossoit.
Yeah, it's Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor are like thoroughbreds. You can't ask them to be trotters. It's just not in their DNA. But I agree with you, Dave. They have to, sit and take a look at how hard guys like Gabe Velarde, Alex Iafallo, Nino Niederreiter, Vlad Namestnikov, and some of the other guys like that have been around for a while here, get back into the zone and help the defenseman in coverage. It can't be just pushing the play up ice all the same time. But yes, you want them to kind of look a lot like each other. But I think the outlier is that number one line. I just don't see how Cole Perfetti, Nino Niederreiter, and whoever it is on the left side, whether it's Nikolai Ehlers or, whether everybody gets elevated up by one position, how they can look like Velarde, Connor, and Scheifele with how that line needs to play. There's going to be responsibility to provide offense from that line. But, watching the game the other night against Ottawa, Velarde takes his 35 to 40 second shift, and Scheifele and Connor are still out there. So now Niederreiter comes out, and halfway through the second line getting on, Perfetti and Iafallo, now Niederreiter's off the ice, and now, somebody else is coming on, and so the lines are a little bit out of sync. I think that needs to be ironed out a little bit, for Kyle and Mark to, maybe take a little bit of a lead from what Velarde's doing and get back to the bench so that you have that continuity with the lines. But yeah, there has to, Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor have to be better without the puck. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I think they're okay with that, as long as you're, as a coaching staff, you're not stifling their creativity, because there's a reason why they've been put on that line with Gabriel Velarde. So finding the happy balance is certainly going to be something that they're going to work towards. I use the word process for getting started out, Dave, and trying to get everybody to look and play the same style, I think is going to take some time. I don't think it's going to happen overnight.
No, and I think, Kelly, you could probably even take it further and say that if both Scheifele and Connor are, significantly better defensively, however you want to use, whatever metric you want to use,
Sure.
like, impact defensively, let's say 25% better or something like that, even 15% better or 10%, that could go a long way in, the Jets being not just a wild card team, but a team that finishes second or third in the Central Division, right? So you're absolutely right. And we've been talking about this for years, right? Like, we've talked about this with you off air, and it's been talked about by fans for years, like, how much better the Jets could be if Scheifele and Connor were better defensive players. So I think that's a huge thing. I wanted to ask you about the beginning of the season, right? Because, as I was formulating the question in my head, I was like, should I ask Kelly about this, or should I ask him about, the D pairings? Because that's another thing that,
ask them both.
Yeah, sure. I could probably put it into. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna ask you about the D pairings, because
Sure.
I think Neil Pionk was a guy that I think most people thought had a bit of a down year last year, not offensively, but I think more so defensively.
Right.
Because Neil Pionk, when he first came over from the Rangers, we didn't really know a lot about him, right? And then he turned that into a big contract with the Jets. I think it was a 5-year contract that he signed with the Jets. And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you see, like, what's your ideal top four? Because before you came on, I said to Dave, like, if Ville Heinola didn't get injured, I think we'd be talking about, did he do enough to crack the top 6, or is he just going to be, the extra defendant for that game against? And I still think that Brendan Dillon and Neil Pionk is your ideal second pair, with Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello as your top pair. But the metrics were horrible last year for Dylan and Pionk. So I don't know. Do you like Dylan Sandberg with Neil Pionk? You've got the Minnesota connection there. Yeah. I mean, obviously Schmitz from Minnesota as well. But, like, what's your ideal top four, Kelly? Let's go with that.
Well, clearly Morrissey and DeMello are going to be your top pairing on this defense for this season. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They play well off of each other. They are both, I think, very good at defending against elite players. So I don't think that's really going to be. And it's really weird, because the last couple of years, it seemed like, Dylan DeMello would always wind up in a third pair or not with Morrissey. And then when the chips were down, you came back to DeMello and Morrissey, and it turned out nice again, as Cactus Jack used to say. So I like the idea that they've kept those guys intact. I'm in the camp where I think the better top four pair, the other top four pairing, is Pionk and Sandberg. And I agree with you 100% on Neil Pionk, and it was more the defensive part of the game. I thought the Jets defense accomplished their goals as a group last year in providing more offense. So I don't think really that's an issue. And with Neil, those first couple of years when he came over, I always used the comparison. He was, kind of like the Westminster Kettle Dog Show, Best in Show, and Junkyard Dog at the same time. Wearing a blue ribbon around his neck, but also having a half-eaten pair of blue jeans in his mouth with saliva dripping out of it as well. He played that way. He played with a lot of snarl in his game, and I thought that was missing for parts of last year for whatever reason, but saw bits and pieces of it even the other night against the Ottawa Senators. So, and I just think Dylan Samberg is ready to take on a top four role. I know it's been discussed a lot. Dave and I, we've talked about this while we've been sitting watching training camp, and how important that was for Dylan Samberg to play in the World Championship last year for Team USA. We all kind of, it's usually the guys where they've either their teams have not made the playoffs or have not made it past the first round. And, this is kind of the consolation prize. But I think we did see during the tournament, and I think this season we're going to see what kind of a benefit it can have for younger guys like Dylan Samberg. He just seems to be playing with so much confidence. And, the other night after the game in Ottawa, we had Dylan on our post-game show, and Paul and Mitchell asked him about what his reaction was when he walked into the dressing room and he saw the A on his jersey for that game in Ottawa. And wow, his response was just off the charts. I mean, he held nothing back on how important that was to him and how it made him feel. And I think that signifies what this franchise, expects of him in terms of taking that next step. So I feel he can add that physical element. Pionk can also add that physical element, but the two of them are both very capable of playing some offense. And then that allows you, to play Brendan Dillon in a third pair, whether it's with Nate Schmidt or Ville Heinola. Ville's eventually going to get better, and man, I hope he's able to pick up where he left off when he does. But the other byproduct with Brendan too is, he is such a value in terms of a penalty killer, and you guys know those are the hardest minutes to play. Mm-hmm. So if you can maybe cut down a little bit on his top 4 minutes to allow him to be able to play in that penalty killing role, and the thing you always have in your back pocket, if over the course of the game the situation calls for you to maybe switch halfway through and maybe have Pionk and Samberg take third pair minutes and Dylan and whoever his partner is jump up to the top 4, you have that kind of flexibility. And that's basically what's been talked about with respect to this roster is the versatility that it has. Up front as well to change around the pieces. I think, the guys like to call it so-and-so has the blender out. Well, I think it's going to be on puree all year because this lineup allows you to do that positively, not negatively.
Okay, so Kelly, what do we have in the air fryer then, Kelly? Fries? What do we got going in there?
No. Apparently Patrick Laine was air frying steaks for Yes, for Adam Fantilli the other day. So
nice. Well, I think if you're an NHL player, you should really be air frying, fine cuts of salmon or fish or whatever. Is steak still a thing that the players are supposed to eat?
I guess so. Perhaps.
Still high in protein, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Well, Kelly, we want to ask you one last question. It's got to be about it doesn't have to be about anything, but I'm going to choose to make it about the goaltending situation because provided Laurent Brossoit stays healthy, and that's a question mark, given the last little bit for him. But if he can stay healthy, have you found it curious the way he and Connor Hellebuck, not he so much, but Connor Hellebuck and the coaching staff have changed the tune a little bit? Because for the longest time, whenever Connor Hellebuck, I want to play as much as I can, and blah blah blah, and and he and Wade Flaherty. They understand, but essentially the Connor Hellebuck decision-making process along with the goalie coach of the Winnipeg Jets. But it just seems to me this year, there's been a signaling, if it's for the best of the team, I will do whatever it takes. And that means, if it means playing less game and giving Laurent Brossoit more, I don't need to get to that 80% of the games played this season. And I just think that to me can go a long way for the goalie since he became an NHL starter in 15-16, has played more games, more minutes, and faced more shots than any other goaltender in the National Hockey League.
Well, I wonder if Connor was watching that series last year with Tampa Bay when Andre Vasilevsky looked absolutely gassed, allowing goals that normally he wouldn't have allowed in his sleep, and started to think, you know what, maybe this having work overload is something I need to take a second look at. And, it was very interesting, Dave, when he spoke to us at the start of camp. And he's, everybody has this perception of me needing to play 65 games. I communicate to the coaching staff what my needs are, but then it's up to them to decide what's best for the team, and I'll adjust to that. And I think the other thing that makes it more, I want to say, comfortable, I guess, for him to take that approach is for the first time in his tenure as a number one netminder with the Winnipeg Jets, he has a backup that he feels very confident can carry the load for 25 to 30 games. I'm looking at it with what Laurent Brossoit has been able to add to his resume since leaving the Winnipeg Jets organization, that you can count on that guy to play anywhere between, I think, 22, 23 to maybe even upwards of 30 starts for the course of the year. Now, this schedule lends itself to being able to play Connor Hellebuyck a lot because there's not nearly as many back-to-backs. But let's face it, for the last couple of years, and Eric Comrie, bless his soul, did a great job that one year he was given the opportunity to do it. But there was always kind of the question mark of, man, we need this game. Can Eric get it done for us? And of course, Dave Lowry, when he took over as the interim head coach, admitted that he probably rode Connor Hellebuyck a little bit more than what he wanted to because, they had to try to stay in the playoff race. But I think that this year, Connor feels more comfortable with the idea of sharing the net a little bit more. Part of that might be through circumstance, but I think part of that is also, and I don't want to call it the maturation process, because I have always looked at Connor as one of the more mature guys on the team, but I think it's also just looking at the time and circumstance of where he is in his career and where this team is at. They're going to have to rely on defense and solid defensive play more than they ever have before. So I think that puts even more of a premium on the goaltending. And with as good of a 1-2 punch as I think the Jets have had since they relocated from Atlanta, I think that's what we're going to see more of here this year for sure.
Well, he is the Jets game host on 680 CJOB. We call him a friend. Kelly Moore, thank you very much for joining us.
Friend status.
What, Kelly, I think you've been spending more time with Dave over the last couple of weeks than Dave's been spending with his significant other. So I'm thinking that, Drew's down in Atlanta. I mean, we have an opening for a host. So maybe you just stay on the show for the next hour.
Well, you know what? I don't want to make this sound gratuitous or anything else like that. But I have a ton of respect for what you guys have done in terms of your longevity and the popularity that you've developed along the way. And Dave, you cover the Moose as well as anybody in this market. You're always there for the Jets. I admire people with a work ethic, and man, you guys have it in spades. So to be called a friend of this show is I don't take lightly, and I mean that in all sincerity.
Thank you, Kelly.
That's very, very nice. We definitely appreciate that, Kelly, coming from you, who's been a sports broadcaster for a long time. The check is going to be you'll probably get the check next week, probably around Wednesday or Thursday. But I was going to say it's 15 years in February 2024 coming up in about, 5 months, 4 months. That's going to be 15 years. So it's incredible. And Dave's been part of the show for all 15 years. So I'm obviously joking because Richie left us in 2016 to become a pro scout. But no, that's very nice of you to say that, because we love doing the show, and you're somebody who we've always looked up to. So that's very nice of you to say that.
Well, anytime, fellas. I enjoy my chats with Dave. And I think I probably spent more time with you in training camp than I have with my wife. Well, I don't know for sure. So, but thanks for having me on, guys. And anytime you want, I'm always happy to come on board.
Thanks, Kelly. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. I'm sure we'll see you on Monday. Enjoy your Thanksgiving and time with the family.
Will do.
Kelly.
I'm going to go back and watch the pictures of that smile of the night in Kamloops.
Excellent. That'll put a smile on your face watching that smile. So have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you on Monday. There he goes. That's Kelly Moore, 680 CJOB, one of the
Kelly's
best voices.
The best. He's a legend. He's
also got one
legend.
of the best voices in
Yes.
in all
Yes.
of sport. Like
Yes.
I love that voice.
He has. I mean, I think Paulie Edmonds has a great voice. I think
Paulie does.
Dan Robertson, Dennis Bayak. Obviously, he used to be the Jets play-by-play broadcaster, but yeah, Kelly's voice is absolutely iconic.
Well, we'll end with Spenty's comment here. We had Kelly more, now we are Kelly less. So that's our signal to go to break.
Maybe we can put up a picture of Kelly Bundy.
That's true. Kelly Kapowski.
Yeah, or Kelly.
What about Kelly Kapowski?
Yep.
Yeah, there's lots of Kellys.
Saved by the Bell.
Options.
Yeah, I got you.
Little Saved by the Bell. All right, let's head to break. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Dave Minuk. He's Ezra Ginsburg. Make sure you smash that like button and hit the subscribe as well.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rollies, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza lives for the big moments. Whether the season is just starting or coming to an epic end. From nerve-wracking ninth innings to OT winners, playoff buzzer beaters to Hail Mary miracles. BP is the best place to watch the game if you can't be at the game. Great food, ice-cold Sub-Zero Coors Light, and friends. And the best part? Season seats are free. Grab your crew and cheer on the good guys at Canada's favorite sports bar, Boston Pizza. Gather round. Must be legal drinking age. Please drink responsibly.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake. After a great game or great deal, it shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Dave M., you're currently muted.
I was currently frozen, Ezzy. It wasn't that I was muted. I was frozen.
I thought it was going to be the Ginsburg show there.
It was about to be the Ginsburg minute. I had to turn the fire off. I wanted to make sure that I'm going to have to fire up the internet a little bit because there was a doings that transpired. I was panicking. I was trying to turn the commercial off and get us back to the broadcast. But unfortunately, it was like, you're having trouble connecting. And I was like going to yell down, like, Ez, it's all you now.
It's fine, Dave. I just would have probably sang like Call Me Maybe on repeat until you came back, because that's my favorite song. So I would have just probably done a little karaoke, and then we would have got back to talking Jets.
All right, well, we are back here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm fireless, as you can see above me, but that's fine as long as we've got the stream rolling, and Ezzy and I are here talking about all things Winnipeg Jets, Manitoba Moose. training camp underway for the Jets. They, of course, have had 17 days of training camp, a couple days off in between, and they are on a day off today. I believe fishing is what Paul Friesen put out there on the interweb. And so they're fishing somewhere in Manitoba as a team bonding experience.
So what would they be catching? Like, is it, I feel like it's
probably the greenbacks. They're probably going after greenbacks is my guess. Coming up from Lake Winnipeg, the walleye run, the greenback run is happening. So I suspect that is what they're going to be targeting. We'll find out. Maybe those will be the hard-hitting questions we ask on Monday as what kind of fish they
I only really know the fish that are out, on Lac de Bonnie, like Bird River, like, so the normal kind of jack, smallmouth bass, walleye, that type of thing. Like I don't catch the big ones like you, Dave. Like I'm not going after the big sturgeons.
Well, you can't target sturgeon right now. The season is over for targeting sturgeon, but anyways, let's talk about the season that is beginning. So as we said, the Jets are on a day off. The Moose are having an inter-squad game. I think at 11 we'll be joined in 20 minutes by the voice, the play-by-play voice, and the head of communications for the Manitoba Moose, Daniel Fink. He's going to join us in 20 minutes to talk all things about the AHL club of Winnipeg. I promised that there would be extended Minuk Moose minute time, Ezzy, so that's how I will get my fix by talking to Daniel about the Moose with you in 20 minutes. So until we do, let's keep things rolling here talking about
I thought for sure, by the way, that you were going to play the Minuk Moose minute bumper. Like I thought that was it looked like you had those little fingers moving. I thought that you were going to maybe hit that early. I mean, Dave, Drew's not here right now. We can talk about the Moose for before Finker comes on. Like
for sure,
that's completely fine. Like you're in control right now, Dave. Like
I agree.
You've got the codes.
Well, I mean, generally speaking, I agree. But the problem is when I went to do when I went to get us out of commercial, like my computer was not agreeing with me. So maybe that was Drew working remotely from Hotlanta trying to impact this show. But we won't allow him to impact the show. As the show will roll along. This is, of course, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Dave Minuk. He is Ezra Ginsburg, and we are talking all things Jets and Jets training camp. And one of the biggest storylines, we've touched on it a little bit, Ezzy, but one of the biggest storylines has to be the health and welfare of Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, day one of camp in the gym, not even something that occurred on the ice. Something was working out, something I think he said he's done 1 million times. And next day dealing with something called neck spasms is what we were told. And it has impacted him consistently now for the last 17 days, or well, actually more, almost 20 days now, with him being on the ice and off the ice. So to me, what the question is like, what if you're the Jets, are you going to do? I mean, you've got this uncertainty around a player that you really need. I mean, if this Jets team is going to make any noise, Nikolai Ehlers has to be one of the biggest drivers of that bus. And right now, you don't even have him, expect that. We don't know, as you said, Ezzy, it could be a 50-50 shot as to whether we see him in that opening night lineup.
Right. And obviously, like the Jets forward group, aside from Ehlers, is healthy, right? Like Perfetti. Right. I mean, if the Jets didn't have Cole Perfetti as well, right? Because we thought that there was a chance there might be a concussion after that hit. I forget who. I mean, that again, I agree with Drew. What Drew said. Yeah, Pospisil. Is there a
Not tennis player?
I was going to say there's a tennis player with that last name as well, right? He's Canadian, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Pospisil, I mean, I don't know how you don't get at least one game or something for that. Like, again, I don't want to, go back in time. Like, I mean, that happened over a week ago, but it was a dirty hit. So I'm just going to put that. I'm on the record as saying that was something that I think that he should have faced some discipline. But it's just nice that Perfetti's back and healthy because that could have been, I think you would agree, worse than initially, or sorry, it could have been, worse just based on the head contact, right? So I think, look, Ehlers, the Jets can still beat the Calgary Flames next Wednesday without Ehlers. The thing is, like, you've got Florida coming up, you've got LA coming up. Like, the Jets' start to the schedule is not the easiest. You've got the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Vegas Golden Knights, who are going to be in town, right? 4 of the first 5 games are against playoff teams last year, right? So again, like, it gets a little bit easier because you've got, I think, Detroit the following week at home. Or no, you've got St. Louis at home, and then you've got Detroit and Montreal. So Detroit and Montreal, I mean, those are, if you want to be a playoff team, Dave, you have to beat a team like Montreal. Detroit, I think, isn't going to be, I mean, they're a decent team. I don't know if they'll be a playoff team this year, but I digress here. What I'm saying is, I mean, it's one thing if Ehlers misses the first game of the season. I'm going to be a lot more concerned if he misses 3, 4, 5 games. And it's not just because the Jets need a healthy Ehlers to be successful this year. It's because you want to see how that second line, that new look second line is with Ehlers, Perfetti, and Niederreiter. So a guy like Alex Iafallo, he can fit in admirably on the second line, or even if you needed like a Vlad Nemesnikov to step up and play on that second line. It looks like it's going to be Iafallo for now, right, Dave? Based on the line combinations in practice. But yeah, it's not good. But again, I'm more concerned about the long-term health. I'm not fixated as much, Dave. I mean, I know that we're all gearing up for the Jets Flame game on Jets Flame. We're going to be there not just for the post-game show, Dave, but we're going to be there for the entire game. So Spency's already asking about beers. I mean, Spency, we're going to have at least 10 fishbowls each to answer your question.
Well, and as he tell Dallas where we'll be.
Yeah, so Dallas, we will be at BP Taylor. So
It's not a secret.
So that's very close to. It's across the street from Grant Park High School. It's I forget the street, but it's on Taylor, and obviously it's BP Taylor. It's close to. It's like right around the Pan Am Pool. If you know where Pan Am Pool is, it's very close to there, or Grant Park High School. BP Taylor next Wednesday. Illegal Curve will be there. We're going to be there watching the whole game between the Jets and the Flyers. Pardon me, Jets and Flames. Let me get the game right here. And then we're going to be broadcasting live. So come say hi. We're going to have specials. We're going to have giveaways. We'll have some IC merch, I think, Dave, to give away. It's going to be Drew, Dave, and I there. So we're looking forward to it. But getting back to Ehlers, Dave, yeah, that's not good. I mean, you obviously want Ehlers in the opening night lineup. But I just hope that it's not anything where he misses more than a game, if he does miss a game, because we need him. We want to see him with Cole Perfetti and Nino Niederreiter on that second line. But thankfully, the Jets' forward depth allows them to plug a guy like Alex Iafallo into the lineup. I'm going to be very interested to also see, like, the third line to me has been a little bit underwhelming. And I'm not sure, like, I realize you've had to move guys around, and Alex Iafallo, in theory, could be on that third line. But I've been a little bit underwhelmed by Mason Appleton. And I realized that he was dealing with an injury, right, Dave? But I think on this team, Mason Appleton's, we lost Dave there. So this is the official Ginsburg experience. I think this might be the first time that I've done a solo show. Oh, okay. Thankfully, it was only about 6 or 7 seconds. I'm not sure what's going on there, Dave, but that was definitely too much Ginsburg on one screen.
Wow, I was about to start texting you. I was like, oh God. I tried responding and I'm like, I can't hear myself. Well, we're going to have a little chit chat with Shaw.
I was about 10 or 15 seconds away from starting to sing Call Me Maybe.
Well, that's when you invite Spency into the show and you guys just start, doing some sort of duet or whatever, because, we had, as they used to say on Jersey Shore, we had a bit of a situation there. Thankfully things are.
And it's amazing, Dave, in those 5 to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
That it was just me. Our viewers went down like 75%. It was crazy. You wouldn't think it would happen that quickly, but we obviously know who the most popular member of IC is. I mean, I've always known that, but it's clearly Dave M.
We're taking this chastising from Joe from Winnipeg seriously. You guys have to be hardwired to your router. Stop using Wi-Fi. Joe,
Joe needs to stop using those big technical terms. Like I know how to turn my computer on and off. That's about it. I know how to restart it. But like he's using these big words like hardwired and router and
yeah, Mindell's always saying that to us too. You guys got to stop using the Wi-Fi, which is not actually the worst part, Joe, is that Ezzy's literally 3 feet away from the router box. So I mean, there's no excuse for Ezzy not being hardwired in. I'm upstairs, so I mean, I'm just lazy and I don't want to run the wiring.
Like I see as 40-year-old Jewish guys, like we're not IT experts. You know what I mean? Like we're still using Napster and MySpace. So. I mean, it's
LimeWire.
You're dealing with guys that are just lucky that we get a whole show off without any technical difficulties. But yes, I think you should be contacting Shaw and complaining.
Yes,
sure.
Yes, I will. And by the way, courtesy of Brass Bonanza, it's Nathaniel Street, Ezzy. Nathaniel Taylor and Nathaniel,
nice.
I believe.
There you go. Yeah, Nathaniel.
So,
yeah.
Dallas is asking. So I can only make it to Saturday. Do you know which BP you're going to? Yes, it's going to be BP Taylor at Taylor and Nathaniel. Just Google it. If I don't know the exact coordinates, but I don't know the address, the specific address, but we will have it more on our socials. I'm sure Mindell will be in charge of that. So let's get back to, and then I had some other questions. John and Dallas were asking about merch. I'm wearing the Illegal Curve hoodie from last year. The merch store will hopefully be open. We'll be modeling some new gear very soon.
Yep.
And the merch store will hopefully be open to start the regular season. We've got some other exciting.
I think actually, I don't know if we can mention this yet, but I think that on Wednesday's season opener live broadcast at Boston Pizza, Drew will be modeling the new IC thong.
It's not that you couldn't, if you shouldn't, I just don't want to hear it. So the fact that you just, I'm thankfully I haven't had a big breakfast, Desi, because I'd be losing it. But let's get back to the Jets talk. So yeah, again, quickly, if you want to join us on Wednesday for the Jets opener, we'll be at BP Taylor. And of course, if you can't join us, this show will be live from BP Taylor as per usual as soon as the final puck drop ends. And we'll be rolling with the Illegal Curve postgame show, the first of 82 Illegal Curve postgame shows coming your way this season. And remember, we'll have a lot of new things coming your way as well. So be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Those are all the things that help us out on this show. So let's get back into the Ehlers talk, because we were talking about that before everything went chaotic. But I agree with you. Like to me, he's the linchpin, right? You've got to have something in that Perfetti, Ehlers, Niederreiter line. They have to be able to, they've practiced a little bit together, but they haven't had a game together. And I know that obviously is causing some consternation amongst Rick Bowness and his coaching staff to not be able to have those guys in any capacity kind of working together to develop, that chemistry. So Perfetti is learning with Niederreiter, which is good because Niederreiter is a really, a real smart player, but they really do need that Ehlers element because Ehlers is a bit of a difficult guy to play with. He's not an easy guy. He's not necessarily a traditional, he'll go where you expect him to go.
He's not a traditional north-south player.
Exactly.
That's for sure. He likes to hang on to the puck. He likes to go east-west. He likes to, everybody, has seen this where Ehlers circles, has the puck and circles around in the offensive zone, and no one can take the puck from him because he's so fast. But you're absolutely right, Dave. And I also found it funny that earlier in training camp, Nino Niederreiter called Alex Iafallo, I think it was, or was it Nemesnikov? Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
When Niederreiter is, of course, from Switzerland, right?
Which is why Kelly Moore cut in and said, coming from you, that's a pretty big compliment.
Exactly. So that was pretty funny. Obviously, Niederreiter doesn't play center, but I would call him a Swiss Army knife in the sense of, he can play on the second, third, or fourth line, right? And he can play on the power play, kill penalties, whatever. But I think you're absolutely right, Dave. Like Nick Ehlers is a key part of this team. I mean, when he was injured last year, we saw what happened. So whether or not he plays with Wednesday, that line's going to be key because I think Scheifele, Connor, Velarde is a much more of a certainty in terms of what you're going to get. Maybe not so much defensively, but that line's going to score a lot of goals. Like I don't think it's ridiculous to think that, Velarde is going to score 30 goals this year. Connor's going to score 50 and Scheifele scores 40, right? Like that's how good that line is. I mean, most likely all three of these guys are going to be at least above 25 goals. And when you're talking about Connor and Scheifele, I think 25 goals would be a huge disappointment, right? So I think you want Ehlers on that line. Hopefully he'll be back for Wednesday. If not, he'll be back for the game on Saturday against Florida. But I think overall, right, like when you're looking at this team and their outlook, I mean, we know ultimately it's going to come down to defense. And also the other thing too, I wanted to mention, Dave, with Ehlers, is power play, right? Like we've talked about this year after year, whether he's on the top power play unit or the second power play unit. I mean, that power play did not look good against the Ottawa Senators. And quite frankly, I mean, they had, I think, 1 or 2 goals in the preseason on the power play. But I mean, at times last year, that power play let them down big time.
Yeah.
So that's another area where I think Nick Ehlers can have a huge impact. So that's another thing that I'm looking at. I mean, I think the Jets obviously want to start the season off, on a good foot, picking up some wins against some good teams. But you want that power play, I think, to be much better. It wasn't terrible last year, but I think at times last year, it really killed momentum for them.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the questions that Rick Bowness was asked about because the PK looks good and it was good against Ottawa. I think
PK was excellent last year, and there's no reason to think it won't be excellent. I mean, the Jets have a top 5 PK, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think they were 1 for 7. I mean, which goes to show you there's just too many penalties in preseason. Nino Niederreiter was asked about that and kind of laughed about, how the progression of too many penalties starting to wind down in the regular season and then in playoffs. Basically anything goes, and whatever they want to see happens because it's just the refs, generally speaking, put away their whistles. But it's going to be, look, the team has a lot of question marks. I think that's ultimately what we're talking about for this Jets club this season, right? You made the moves you did with the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, and I think it's now going to be, can Cole Perfetti adapt? Now, look, just to be clear, I don't think there's going to be any issue of Cole Perfetti adapting to playing up the middle. I think if you listen to what Cole Perfetti's assessment,
that's where he wants to be, Dave. You know that. I mean, that's
when he was
exactly
drafted,
where he wants to be.
When he was drafted in 2020 from the Saginaw Spirit of the OHL, they asked him, what position do you prefer? He said up the middle. Well, he said center. But the fact of the matter is that's where he wants to play.
And they also didn't draft Perfetti 10th overall for him to be a fourth line winger, right? Like,
right.
He's got, 80, 90 point upside. I don't think it's ridiculous to say that. He's only 21 years old, right? 22 years old. So you're absolutely right. This is the position that he was born to play. And I do think he will succeed.
Right. And again, it's just in terms of him and his ability to stay healthy. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is he spoke about the ability, seeing, not having a wall basically to your left or your right, depending on where he is, but having the flexibility to go up the middle or either side. So you can just see the way he understands the game. And again, he's going to have to adapt, but we saw it in the AHL, as a young 19-year-old kid who had an exemption basically to play in the AHL during that COVID year. He adapted, and Pascal Vincent, who was the coach of the Moose at the time, spoke about Perfetti's vision and how he went to the hard areas, and he'll do it in the NHL as well. I really don't have a concern in that regard, especially giving him experienced wingers in Niederreiter and Ehlers potentially to really kind of help, calm any nerves that the kid may have as he becomes a second line center in the NHL. But look, this is a position the Jets have been trying to fill since Brian Little, even when Brian Little was still on the team but specifically now that since 2019 when Brian Little was prematurely injured and of course had to ultimately not retire, but his career came to a conclusion. So the Jets have been hoping to find his replacement. They think they've got it in Cole Perfetti. It'll be very interesting to see. And again, that's just one of many question marks these Jets have, but that's why they play the games. That's why we watch the games. That's why we talk about the games here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, because those questions become answers. That's an answer. That's a common saying, I should say, from Daniel Fink, who will be joining us after the break. Daniel likes to say that when questions become answers, we can ask him that when he does the intro to every single Moose game. We'll be talking to the play-by-play voice of the Manitoba Moose, Daniel Fink, right after these words from our sponsors. You are listening to the Illegal Curve post-game show, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on
the Illegal Curve pregame show.
There you go. Pregame for the game on Wednesday.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza lives for the big moments. Whether the season is just starting or coming to an epic end. From nerve-wracking ninth innings to OT winners, playoff buzzer beaters to Hail Mary miracles. BP is the best place to watch the game if you can't be at the game. Great food, ice-cold Sub-Zero Coors Light, and friends. And the best part, season seats are free. Grab your crew and cheer on the good guys at Canada's favorite sports bar, Boston Pizza. Gather round. Must be legal drinking age. Please drink responsibly.
We did it! Again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake. After a great game or great deal, It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I am your host, Dave Minuk. He is my main man, Ezra Ginsburg, and we have been spending an hour and a half talking about the Jets, the NHL club of Winnipeg. But with no Mindell, I get to do what I want to do, which is, of course, talk about the AHL club of Winnipeg. And for that, there's nobody better to talk to than Daniel Fink, play-by-play voice of the Manitoba Moose. Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Good morning, gentlemen, and the chat, which I can see is firing away. I always like this StreamYard because I can see what's going on and how everybody's chirping me when I start talking. So
Dan, you continue to have the best backgrounds of any guest in the history of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. There's always ice and players on the ice behind Dan. Like you are a true hockey guy.
If there's one thing I'm going to get right in any of these online shows, whether it's you guys or us, it's going to be the background, and sometimes that's tricky, but we always try.
Well,
that would actually be warm-ups for the inter-squad game that's just about to get going in about half an hour here.
I was going to say, you've got the inter-squad game coming up with the Manitoba Moose. They're the only game in town right now with the Jets off. Gallivanting or fishing or whatever they're doing. But the fact is the Moose are day 4 or 5, I'm not entirely certain, of their training camp, which got started earlier this week. And one of the big moves that happened last night was 2023 fifth rounder, or yesterday afternoon, I should say, Thomas Milic getting his first pro contract with the Manitoba Moose. He'll sign a 1-year AHL deal. So, Daniel, what have you seen from Thomas, a kid that folks in Winnipeg are familiar with because they, of course, saw him with the Seattle Thunderbirds taking on the Winnipeg Ice in the WHL Championship?
Yeah, it was really cool yesterday to just see that reaction that the signing got. I mean, signings are usually one of our better performing social media posts. Exciting time for everybody, but you could really see that a lot of people happy for Thomas Milic to sign that first pro contract, and what the future holds for him in the weeks to come, we're not too sure. We'll see if he's playing for the Moose, if he ends up playing for the Norfolk Admirals. We'll see how it all plays out, but very exciting to at least get him on his pro journey and get him started on that. Of course, he wouldn't have been eligible to return for junior as a 20-year-old, but gets rolling in that pro career, and a guy who's just had success. That's all you can really say. He's just had success wherever he's been, and last season was just so incredible, whether it was the WHL goaltender of the year, WHL playoff MVP. I mean, getting a guy here that's got that winning pedigree. So obviously a bit of an undersized goaltender as it stands these days, but you know what? It doesn't seem like he's a guy that lets anything stand in his way. So excited to see how he progresses.
Dan, we got to talk about Parker Ford, and you might be one of the only people that wasn't surprised at how well he was performing in training camp and the preseason, because as you know, he played a little bit with the Moose last year, including the playoffs, and he produced. And, you know, Dave was all over Parker Ford talking about him and before anybody really knew who he was. And, you know, he almost made the Jets opening night lineup. And he's obviously going to start the season with the Moose unless there's some injuries. But just how impressed were you with what he did, and what type of role are you expecting him to play on the Moose this year?
Surprised at how Parker came in and the game he plays? Absolutely not. Surprised at maybe the success that he ended up having, leading the Jets in scoring the preseason. I don't think anybody would have called that. But when a guy comes in and just plays true to himself and is just, I mean, everybody saw it. Everybody got onto the Parker Ford bandwagon. It's the way he plays is the way you would like to see a lot of guys play. He just puts his head down. He's a little cannonball out there. He's not the biggest guy, but he's really solid. He's a strong guy. And he just brought that work ethic that's brought him through his hockey career to this point. I mean, he's a guy that showed up with the Moose and was kind of like, okay, here's this Parker Ford guy. We'll see what he can do. Last few games of the season, we've seen it before. And he kind of won everybody over. And then he was on the playoff roster and played all 5 games for the Moose in that playoff series against the Milwaukee Admirals. So I think that actually tells you a lot about the kind of guy he is and the kind of game he brings, that he was able to show up and immediately earn the respect and trust of the coaching staff in such a short sample size in 8 games. So now we'll see how that translates over a full season. I mean, you'll see you guys get off to that great start in preseason, and then maybe it takes a little bit to find their legs after that. But when you play consistently the type of game that Parker Ford does, you're going to find success in the pro game.
Now, Daniel, we don't know what the goaltending situation will look like. I of the opinion that Milic will probably start with Norfolk, provided Colin Delia gets put on waivers and clears waivers and ends up getting sent to the Moose. If that transpires, if that ends up happening, and you have a Salmon and Delia tandem for Manitoba, how important will that be to have 2 veteran netminders for such a young team? They were a young team last year. They've got to be an even younger team this year with all the influx of Jets prospects.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Oskari Salminen brings this season, because he's a guy that came in with incredible numbers out of Finland. And, burst onto the scene at a shutout in his first AHL start. And then it was kind of an up and down season for Oskari, but an excellent playoff run. In those 4 games that he played for the Moose, he was outstanding to give the Moose a chance to win that series. So if he can bring that play and consistently provide that game in and game out, rather than having a good start here, a couple of good starts, and then maybe a tough one the third time out, then the Moose are going to be pretty formidable. I mean, we have a pretty good idea of what Colin Delia brings. I mean, he's a guy that's started to rack up a pretty decent number of NHL games throughout his career. Of course, Dave, we saw him back in 2018 absolutely stymie the Moose in that playoff series. So I was giving the gears about that when I met him Jets production day a few weeks ago. But that backbone is so important. And the Moose previously have kind of relied on that defense, that dynamic defense. Obviously, that's going through some changes now with players graduating or possibly graduating, I guess. Still pretty stout back there. But when you have that backbone of goaltending, especially in the American Hockey League, it's so important because, in any hockey league, really, it just gives you that chance to win. If you're not giving up that so-so goal every game, it's like playing ahead, because you can trust your goaltenders and you know you're going to have that opportunity.
Dan, we want to focus on the upcoming Moose season, but I need to ask you about a few players. You just mentioned Moose players graduating, and Ville Heinola and Declan Chisholm are obviously, part of, they qualify, right? And you those guys better than anybody. And obviously, we can talk about the Heinola injury, which is just awful for a guy who looked like he was making, we don't know this for sure, but all indications were that he was going to make the Jets opening night roster. Whereas maybe before training camp, we thought there was a good chance he was going to play for the Moose. But I guess the question, if I can, formulate it properly, is, how have you thought Declan Chisholm and Ville Heinola looked prior to that Heinola injury? Because it looks like Chisholm as well has a good shot at making the opening 23-man roster.
Yeah, I don't know if I can talk too much about how they've been playing with the Jets. I don't catch all the preseason games sometimes. So,
sure.
But of course, absolutely just heartbroken for Ville. I mean, he has had such a good camp. He put in so much work. He had the right attitude last season, and it was tough at times because he's a guy that kind of got that initial success, and it maybe shifted the expectation for himself, for the fan base, for everybody. And then he had to go through the process. And sometimes we forget just how young Ville Heinola still is, but he's putting the work and was really making that push. And you can see just from the way the Jets reacted to it, from even just the building. We were hearing about it. We were playing that exhibition game against the Bisons, so just kind of hearing from the rink about it, and it's so tough to see that happen. But for both of those players, I mean, truly exceptional defensemen at the AHL level. I mean, they provide so much offense at the AHL level, and of course can manage their own business in their own end. Obviously not the biggest guys, so they have to rely on positioning. They have to rely on quick sticks. They have to rely on being ahead of the play and using their feet to get them out of trouble, things like that. And 2 very exciting players to watch at this level, and hopefully hoping for the best for Ville, that he's able to make a quick recovery. And obviously there's still some cuts to be made for the Jets, and we'll just fingers crossed that Declan can hold on there, because it's always exciting when we can see those guys achieve their dreams.
Well, speaking of guys who are down and you have been watching, Chaz Lucius and Nikita Chibrikov, some 2021 draft picks of the Winnipeg Jets, 2 very talented guys, and looking to make their impact with the Manitoba Moose. So what did you see from them so far? And it looked like, I think Jeff Malott was playing with them as well to give him a little veteran experience with that group. But what did you see from that trio, but also from those two guys looking to make an impact with the Moose?
Yeah, they'll change things up a little bit here for this inter-squad game. It looks like Chaz Lucius is going to play with Jeff Viel and former WHL first overall pick Stelio Mateos, the Winnipegger, and then Chibrikov will actually be playing with Dom Toninato and CJ Cease, so a couple more veteran players with Chibrikov. But you know what, Nikita was doing his thing all over the ice in that exhibition game, creating space for himself at a nice feed, a couple of nice feeds over to Wyatt Bongiovanni, one of them ending up in the back of the net. And for Chaz Lucius, of course, the important thing for him right now is to just play games. Obviously, the injury last season, or a couple of injuries last season that held him back, and so disappointing after he got off to that electric start with the Portland Winterhawks. And then, of course, misses the end of the season. So I think the most important thing for Chaz is to stay healthy, get up to speed here, and then we'll see, let that skill shine through. Obviously, such a smart player, knows where in the exhibition open the scoring. So looking forward to what he's able to do. And I mean, Chibrikov is a bit more of an unknown factor. I mean, we just haven't had a chance to really see him against AHL competition yet. So it'll be interesting to see once things get going. And of course, everybody's excited about the speed that Brad Lambert brings. He's playing on the line with Parker Ford and Jeff Malott here today. So get some speed up the middle between a couple of guys who can really create some space with the body.
Yeah, and Dan, that's who I wanted to ask you about. We talked about a former Seattle Thunderbird in Thomas Milic, and then you've got to throw in Tyrell Bauer as well, right? Dave's been all over that Seattle connection, but I just wanted to ask you about what has kind of stood out to you about Brad Lambert, because let's be honest, a lot of Jets fans, think the Jets got a steal by getting him with the 30th overall. I think it was 30th overall pick, 30th or 31st overall pick. It was late in the first round. I remember that. But what has stood out to you? You mentioned the speed, which is obvious, but I guess what are realistic expectations for Brad Lambert? Because I think some Jets fans thought he might even crack the Jets lineup this year. Kind of tough to do with, all the forward depth the Jets have with all the LA Kings that came over. But just what's your assessment of Lambert early on in training camp?
Well, you guys know me, and what I'm always going to come on here and preach is patience. I've been doing it for years, and I will continue to do it because we want these guys to jump right into the lineup. But and I think we saw it last year that sometimes they need extra time. I mean, Brad got to the AHL and found some success his first couple of games, had a few points, and then it kind of got into the learning stage where he's learning to play this North American game, smaller ice, and again playing against players that are far older than him and more experienced and more physically developed, and gets down to the WHL and lights the world on fire, right? Gets to play against his peers, gets to have fun playing hockey again, and really let his skills shine through. And that's important. When you want players to be those top six, top line players, you need them to play that role. So he got to do that in the WHL, and now the Moose will be looking for him to start to do that a little bit at their end. So I guess I'll always preach patience. I never want to put expectations on guys because this is where they develop. This is where they learn. So the outlook is very different from today, where it might be in 4 months when we're getting towards the end of the season. So you just want to see a player like Brad be able to play his game, use that skill side, will also learn to be responsible, because you're never going to be successful at the next level unless you're putting up 100 points a year. Coaches don't usually have too much patience for a guy that can't play defense. And even then, you still want to be reliable in your own zone. So that's a lot of the learning process and playing against those big players. And again, comes down to putting that work in the gym too. I mean, he's a young man, still got to build out that frame, and it should be a lot interesting to see how he progresses through the season.
We're joined by the play-by-play voice of the Manitoba Moose, Daniel Fink, talking all things AHL hockey in Winnipeg. Daniel, this Moose Club has the opportunity because, like you said, a lot of young guys, and you don't want to put the weight of expectation of instant success on their shoulders. And I think part of what helps insulate them from that is having good veteran players in the lineup. And the Jets, or the Moose, do have that. They do have that in the form of Jeff Malott, who we've already talked about. Dominic Toninato, I think, is the consummate guy to help these young players, have the right attitude. Here's a guy who wants to be in the NHL. He's in the AHL, but he seems to always have the right attitude when he comes down to the AHL to earn himself that next chance to get back up to the NHL. And guys like Christian Reichel, and I go on and on. But I think that there's a number of good leadership guys in that regard to kind of insulate these young guys from that. We haven't even mentioned Danny Zhilkin. There's a lot of young players who are just getting their first taste of pro potentially, and you've got these guys to help insulate them from kind of that weight of expectation.
Yeah, those veteran players, I was talking about this with Jamie Thomas, those veteran players are so important. We'll go through the summer and Jets or any NHL team will make signings for those depth guys that might play in the AHL, and fans might scoff, "Oh, who's that? Why do we care about this? Plan the parade." You hear the things on social media, but these guys are so important to the future of your team. They're the guys that come in and have been around the block. They've played 300, 400 pro games, or at least over that 200 mark as you start to get into the more veteran guys. They're the guys who have been there. They've been through it. They've been in the trenches. They've worked their way through. And those are the guys that are imparting their wisdom, their experience onto your young players. And if you don't have that, if you don't have those guys to kind of solidify around the young players, it's so tough to build that winning culture, because you'll note in the AHL, it tends to be the more veteran teams that find success. So teams that might be in a different place in the cycle. The Jets have built their way right now. So the Moose are going to be very young, especially up front. And that can be very tough. You're going to have tough nights when you're playing against a more veteran team in the middle of January or February, and it's a real grind, and maybe you're on a 10-day road trip. But that's where guys like your CJ Cease, Dominic Toninato, Christian Reichel, Jimmy Olney, of course, Ashton Sotner, these are the guys that have been through it. They know they can push through. They can set that example, and they're so, so important for those young players to learn from. I mean, we've been talking to a few guys this weekend. A lot of the forwards mentioned Mark Scheifele when they were at Jets camp, just being able to see his process and what he does, and setting that example just by the work ethic that he has. So you translate that to the AHL, and now these guys are going to be spending not just a training camp, but like I said, months with these players, and that's who your guys are learning from for the next generation coming up.
Dan, you mentioned Mark Scheifele. When he said this was his 13th training camp, I don't know if I've ever felt more old. Maybe when I see all the gray hairs in my beard, but when he said this is my 13th
behind you, so
it's unbelievable. No, you're a young buck, Dan. I wanted to ask you about Wyatt Bongiovanni, because when the Jets signed him, the Jets/Moose signed him. The first thing I said to Dave was, "That's an amazing last name. I love a good last name." But I didn't know much about him, and I think he scored 13 goals, 14 goals last year for the Moose. And I remember, I obviously don't watch as much Moose as Dave does, but I was always impressed by him. And he seems like a guy who, this is only his second full pro season with the Moose after he had a successful college career. But it seems like this is a guy who the Moose are going to depend on more this year. And he's still young, right? 23 or 24 years old. But it seems like, especially with some of the guys the Moose lost, it seems like, he's going to play a more integral part of the Moose offense this year.
Yeah, and I mean, for Wyatt, he's a guy that can really be that power play specialist for you, right? He can really fire the puck. I mean, we saw that. Obviously, his most memorable goal last year was that Game 3 snipe on the power play to give the Moose the win in overtime in Milwaukee. But that's what they're going to look for him. He's got that wicked shot. He has a nose for the net. Scored a couple in the exhibition game the other day. So if he can find some chemistry with some of these young players as well, I mean, that's the interesting thing. I mean, we'll branch out from Wyatt here, but you have guys like Daniel Torgerson, Henry Nikkanen, who are into their second year of pro now, and will be also looking to make a next step. So the Moose, make no mistake, have lost a lot of offense this offseason. I mean, they could start the season without 6 of their top 8 scorers from the past season. That's a lot of offense to replace, and the Moose have brought in potential. It'll be interesting to see who steps into those roles, who's able to replace some of that production. Is it a guy like Wyatt Bongiovanni or Daniel Torgerson who are able to make their mark and start to push up the roster production-wise? Is it a rookie like a Chaz Lucius, Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, Danny Zhilkin, those guys? Who's going to bring that offense? There's plenty of opportunity there for them to do so because of the holes that have been created by the turnover, by the cycle that the Jets are in right now with all these young forwards. So they're going to have their opportunity, the Wyatt Bongiovannis, really all these young forwards, they'll have their chance to make their mark, and they'll all be competing behind me here in a few minutes to try and show why they should get to start the season up the lineup for Mark Morrison.
We're joined by Daniel Fink, the voice of the Manitoba Moose, talking about the AHL club of Winnipeg. Daniel, folks are asking why I'm not doing a Minuk Moose Minute. I'm like, this is a Minuk Moose half an hour. I mean, what are you talking about? This is what we're doing. This is the greatest joy, is to be able to just chat AHL hockey. And, you mentioned Daniel Torgerson, who is a player that, is expected to take a step forward and have a big season for the Moose. It's going to be expectation. I want to ask about a different Swedish second rounder, and it's Simon Lundmark, who had a quiet training camp with the Jets, but he actually looked, I thought, pretty effective when he got those opportunities with playing in some of the games for the Winnipeg Jets. What are your expectations of him? Because, he's a guy who he's like a Dylan DeMello type when people ask me to describe him. He's not flashy, he's not exciting, but he's consistent. And again, that's the goal for him, is to become that consistent player like a DeMello. But what have you seen from him in the short period of time that training camp has been underway for the Moose?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned quiet, and I think sometimes Simon Lundmark is at his best when you have no idea he's there, and that's not a slight by any means. He's just a guy who quietly goes about his business, and if things are quiet, it means he's shutting down every play around him. He's getting the puck out quickly, and there's not a lot of action happening. I think for Simon, last year at times was a bit of a struggle. He just kind of got into a 5-6 game stretch where it was a bit of a fight for him, and was having troubles kind of, it was extra giveaways, things like that, but he battled through it. I think that's one of the things that guys learn in the American Hockey League, is you're going to have those stretches where it's a fight and you're not feeling great about yourself, but you have to work your way through it. That's exactly what he did. That's important experience. So looking to a year, this is a big year for Simon. I mean, he's at the end of his entry-level contract, so it's a bit of a year where he needs to show that he can make that progression. And while he was playing behind guys like Ville Heinola, Declan Chisholm, Leon Gavanka, the list goes on, with the Moose having that great defense that they've had over the years. You can roll back a couple of years, Dylan Sandberg and Johnny Kovacevic, guys like that. Now it's his opportunity to step up the lineup and be like, this is my year. I need to show what I'm going to do this season and be that dependable defensive defenseman that at times can bring a little offense as well. So we'll see what the season holds for Simon Lundmark, and what's going to be a very different Moose back end this season.
Yeah, Dan, just last question. I wanted to ask you about Jeffrey Viel, because he obviously was assigned to the Moose. He spent 4 or 5 years in the San Jose Sharks organization, kind of up and down between the NHL and the AHL. But I think when the Jets signed him, people were looking at him and they saw the penalty minutes, and we know that he's got the ability to drop the mitts and play a physical game, but he also had 15 goals for the Barracuda last year. And you talked about it a little bit, how much the Moose it's going to be more of a score by committee team. Not that it wasn't last year, but when you lose a guy like Jansen Harkins, I mean, he's a guy that could have easily scored 30 plus goals for the Moose. So how important is Viel, not just for his leadership and his ability to protect his teammates? Like you mentioned, it's going to be a very young Moose team again this year, but how important is it to have his offense? Because this is a veteran AHL player, who can put the puck in the net. Maybe not at the same level as a guy like Jansen Harkins, but like we talked about, he had 15 goals last year for the Barracuda.
Yeah, and there's a guy that again, we were talking about the veterans, and I'm still catching up to the roster. It's changing every day, so there's another good mention. I mean, he is in that veteran exempt group, just barely up over that 260 games, I believe. So there's a guy that brings that hard edge and can, like you said, drop the mitts and plays that physical game. I think we saw that in the preseason with the Jets, but at the AHL level seems to have a little bit of finish. Haven't had an opportunity to see him apply his trade with the San Jose Barracuda, so it'll be interesting to see how he fits into this Moose group. But like you said there, a guy that can kind of bring that physicality and chip in with 10, 15 goals a season, that certainly is a valuable asset to have in your back pocket for the Moose. And a guy that they had the last couple of years, Nevin Polai, kind of fit that role, brought the physicality, was a bit of a policeman out there at times and kept everybody in order, but could also come through with 20 plus points a season, around 10 and 10. So for Viel, maybe the Moose are hoping that maybe he can take that a step further and be a little bit more of an offensive threat. So we'll see how this all balances out. To me, it's certainly going to be an interesting start to the season for the Moose.
Well, as he said, it was the last question. It was going to be the last question, but just quickly, Daniel.
Boys, I got a game to get to here.
Oh yeah, that's true. Okay, well,
Hit me. Let's go.
No, I just wanted to hit you with one last one, and it's just the importance of guys getting their feet wet in the organization. And Elias Salamonson, who was assigned by the Jets to the Moose and just spent a few days practicing with the guys, we tend to ignore how important that goes for the next year when they're hoping to make the Jets to the jump to the organization. But can you just speak to that impact of what just 3 or 4 extra days with the Moose, getting to know the coaching staff, the players, can do for a player when they come back the next year?
Oh, it's huge. Whenever we talk to players about that opportunity, they say, oh, it helped me so much. And for the Moose this year, they have the advantage that Danny Zhilkin, Nikita Chibrikov, Dmitry Kuzmin, all these guys, are Carson Golder's another one, were with the team at the end of the season, in the playoffs, no less. They didn't play any games, but they learned a lot over those few weeks that they were with the team. And talking to Chaz Lucius, Brad Lambert, they spent the beginning of the season in the organization, and they're so much more comfortable. They know the city. They know where they're going out to eat. They know where they're going out to have a good time, things like that. They can just come and play hockey and go to work. They know this city now. So for Elias Salamonson, he gets that time with the Winnipeg Jets. He gets that time with the Manitoba Moose, familiarizes himself a bit with the city, familiarizes himself with the organization. So when he inevitably comes back, he's just ready to go.
Perfect.
So where did Chaz Lucius and Brad Lambert go in Winnipeg for a good time, Dan?
Probably a different place than me, because they are young men, and who knows.
Thanks, Daniel. All right, we'll let you get to the intra-squad game, which I believe gets underway in 4 minutes. We appreciate you guys not starting it till after the Illegal Curve Hockey Show comes to its conclusion. So thanks for joining us this morning, Daniel, and providing your insight on all things Manitoba Moose.
Thanks for having me on. Remember, home openers coming up on Friday, the 13th. Lucky for everybody. But you know what? There's great seats available. It's going to be a great time. And you know what? If you want to see Jets prospects, I mean, this year is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how it all plays out. So it's an exciting time for the Moose, and we're really excited to see how all these young guys start to develop in their pro careers. And we'd love you to come along for the ride.
Well, I'll be there, Daniel. You can be assured of that, but I will be a non-paying customer, but hopefully some of the paying customers will be there to witness the Moose hockey. And like you said, all those prospects from the Winnipeg Jets organization. All right, Daniel, thanks very much for joining us. Enjoy the intra-squad game. We'll see you at Moose training camp over the next few days. Have a good rest of your Saturday.
Thanks a lot, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
Cheers,
thanks,
Dan.
Same to you, Daniel. All right, there he goes. That's Daniel Fink, the play-by-play voice, the man with the real insight. Yeah, he knows the Moose backwards and forwards. I only know the Moose forwards. I don't know them backwards and forwards.
Right.
Daniel knows them backwards.
It's like when I used to
forwards.
play hockey, I could only skate forwards and I couldn't skate backwards, which was weird because I was a defenseman when I played for the River Heights Cardinals / Varsity View Falcons. So, but I could only go forwards. So.
Well, and as we should mention, because I think that was a notable, thing that happened, was that Elias Salamonson, the Jets 2022 second rounder. They love their Swedish second rounders, and he was the right side guy, big kid, made a real big impact, and it was interesting to hear him.
He looks like he's a future NHL defenseman.
Oh, I don't think
like,
there's
no
any
offense
question,
to some of the players that were in Jets training camp, but I mean, not everybody is going to graduate to be an NHL defenseman, especially with all of the current NHL veteran defensemen that the Jets have, right? Like a couple of years from now, when there's some expiring contracts, there's definitely going to be some opportunities. And Dave, you know this, but Elias Salamonson, I mean, he looks like he's going to be a good defenseman in the future, and he's really young. And what was weird, or not weird, but unique, is that the Jets actually could have assigned him to the Moose, right?
Yes.
Like that's not always the case when players are under contract overseas, right? So it looks like there's a good chance Salamonson's going to play pro next year in the Jets organization.
Yeah, there's a very good chance, and he's a really nice looking prospect, and people are really excited about what he's able to bring, what he looked like, and especially on that right side, especially with some of the question marks for the next year or two with the Jets. So
I love his aggressiveness. That's what stood out to me. He's got the skill, but he's aggressive defensively. Like the way he bodies guys off the puck, he angles guys. You talk about the active stick and everything like that. He's just a good all-around defenseman. Like, I think the skating is definitely, A level skating. He really is. I don't think the Jets expect him to put up Josh Morrissey type of offensive numbers 2 or 3 years from now. But I think especially on the right side where we know that the depth is better on the left side. I think there's no doubt, Dave, that Elias Salamonson is the the top Jets prospect on the right side. And it's going to be fun to watch him in Sweden this year. And then, like I said, I think everyone
could play World Juniors.
Exactly. I think we're going to be surprised if he isn't, with the Moose or / Jets next year.
Ezzy Fartrap thinks you're looking very handsome today.
I appreciate it. Is it Fart Trap? Is it Fart Trap or is it Far Trap?
I'm going with Fart.
Either way, I was always told by my dad to never turn down a compliment. So I appreciate that. I don't know if I look any more handsome than I do, in previous shows, but I'll take the compliment. Dave M is frozen, so hopefully Dave is not going to be frozen. At least I'm seeing a frozen Dave M. I'm not sure about anybody else, so I'm not sure if I should continue talking. But it looks like Dave M is having some technical difficulties, so hopefully he's going to be back with us momentarily. Maybe I'll start reading some comments. I can't put comments up because I don't have that ability. Spency is saying RIP Dave, which I don't think that he has passed away, but he is currently frozen. Dave, anytime you want to come back, come back. I'm not sure if Dave's going to sign out. Baby Yoda is saying it's like a Lambert disappears if he is challenged by bigger players. Jeff Bose is saying fart rap is drinking. So maybe it is fart rap. What else should we talk about? Does anybody want to see me sing as we wait for, looks like Dave M is back. Dave, you were frozen there for a good 30 seconds.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to have some fun with that, and look what happens. The stream gods came down and stroked me down and smote me down, I should say. And now it's just all about it was the Ginsburg experience.
I couldn't get the comment up there, but Spency was saying RIP Dave. I was saying that I don't think you have passed.
I appreciate
but you definitely had frozen. So maybe it was should have been RIF, rest in frozen or something like that. But I'm glad to have you back there because we were about to go into the Ginsburg karaoke hour, and I don't know how many people actually wanted to see that.
Well, could you imagine though if you just started randomly doing karaoke for a good hour, and then all of a sudden our views went from all the people that are currently in there and went 5 times as many.
I need some more cocktails if I'm going to do karaoke. I'm one of those people that I have a couple White Claws and then I start to loosen up a little bit, but
doesn't take much.
Let's just say that singing is not my forte.
Well, whatever. We know what your forte is, and it's talking hockey on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, the Illegal Curve postgame show.
And eating is definitely my forte.
I was going to say, well, we do all of those things all in conjunction, and we'll be starting with those postgame shows coming up on Wednesday. Where's Frosty? How come Frosty hasn't posted our sponsors up yet? I'm a little bit concerned about that, but it's we're getting, Ezzy, I don't know where the 2 hours went, but we appreciate you spending your Saturday morning here on the
I think Dave M is frozen again. So something's going on with our StreamYard technology here. Something's going on with the internet connection here. But I think what we'll do here is we'll thank our sponsors because I see that Frosty Winnipeg has put up our sponsors. He always does. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. You got Jeremiah Watkins tonight, Charlie Demers next week, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, and Grid Park. Thank you very much for the continued support from our Illegal Curve sponsors. I'm not sure. Nope. See, Dave is gone. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Dave M today. So again, guys, you get the Ginsburg experience. So my name is Ezra, and I've been a member of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show for almost 15 years. I enjoy long walks on the beach. I like submarine sandwiches. What else do I like? I love my children, Ruben and Ariella. I love my wife. I'm not sure how many people are watching right now. I'm not sure how many people are watching live. Dave M is not having the best show so far. He's having some problems upstairs with his internet connection. So I think what we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to wrap it up. I'm not sure if Dave is coming, but we want to thank everybody for watching live. Drew Mindell, our usual host, is down in Atlanta. That's why it was just Dave Minuk and I. Okay, we've got Dave back here. What's going on, Dave? I was getting so nervous there.
And the worst part was
alone there for a minute.
And the worst part was you can't even end the stream. So this show would have just kept going and going. And I was so excited. I was like, okay, we're going to get the perfect show, 2 hours exactly. And that's it. So I think, Ezzy, I think I heard you say goodbyes to all of our sponsors. So Thank you very much for joining us on this Saturday morning. Enjoy the rest of your day. Any Jets or Moose news will, of course, be on illegalcurve.com. You've been listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Dave Minuk. He's Ezra Ginsburg. We'll be back on Wednesday for the first Jets game, the first Illegal Curve postgame show. Join us at BP on Taylor. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you very much for listening. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.